Are we live or?
I don't know, I assume we are.
We're rolling.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
You guys can talk.
No, that's how I normally talk.
Yeah.
I just go into
Yeah,
broadcast mode
sure.
randomly. So, okay.
Well, it's good to see you. Cheers.
You too. There you go. Yeah.
Lovely country of Poland.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't expect to meet a nice girl like you here. But here we are in
What do
Poland.
you know?
Yeah,
Fate has
exactly.
brought us together.
Exactly. So I want to ask you about what feels like a giant war on the meritocracy, on achievement. You're the richest person in the world. You've started 3 of the biggest companies in history.
Non-sovereign, not counting sovereign.
And who would? And who would? But
It's just, I'm not richer than Putin from, I'm not starting,
Well, yeah, I mean,
I'm not starter war rich.
Exactly. Fewer assassinations, high levels of wealth,
exactly.
like all good. So why do you think right now there is such a war, and it seems like on all sides of the political aisle,
Sure.
against people who achieve, against people who are smart? It feels like right now innovators are under attack. And again, it doesn't seem like that's super political. It seems like people on the right and people on the left have this giant theory that the economy, that whoever succeeds in the economy must necessarily be rigging it, that innovators are somehow screwing the little guy. What do you make of that? Where's that coming from?
Well, I mean, I think some of this is really just communism rebranded, just with different marketing. Fundamental to the free market or capitalism is meritocracy. Like, may the best product or service win, and the best product or service will be made by the team that works the hardest, is the most talented, and that is what results in great products and services in a capitalist economy. And I always blows my mind when I discover that kids coming out of college in America who had things very easy take communism actually seriously. It blows my mind. I thought it was a joke. In fact, I was on FK Twitter. I was joking about the ridiculousness of taking that seriously anymore. And then a whole bunch of people attacked me. They were like, "Of course it's serious." I'm like, "What? Are you guys crazy? Just dust off your copy of Das Kapital? Like, what, are you kidding me?" I'm like, how many times has that experiment been run with terrible consequences? And and generally for any given political philosophy, you have to say which side has to build the wall to keep people in. That's the bad side. It's not subtle. It wasn't West Berlin that built the wall.
But you see, you see this giant sort of myth. There's like a giant myth-making project that's taken place where, if you are successful, they now have to rewrite history about you. So you were apparently an emerald scion. You were brought up uber wealthy.
Show me where
you inherited
this mine
all your
is.
wealth.
I'd like to see a picture of this mine. If everyone can dig this mine up, I'd love to see it. First of all, the entire emerald industry is like worth a pittance. And I've never even seen this mine. It's some like random story that my dad made up, basically. But my dad, who has many talents, I want to be clear, he is an extremely talented engineer, electrical and mechanical engineer, and a very talented artist. I mean, he could draw everything from like in the style of Rembrandt to watercolors to sketches, anything. He could sketch this room, and then say do a caricature of anyone, and he'll do a character that matches their personality. He might be the best real-time artist I've ever seen. So he's got a lot of talents, but unfortunately, he has a few screws loose. Faster than we all. And he actually went bankrupt in the 90s. So my brother and I have been supporting him financially for the last 25 years. And we've inherited nothing from him, so there's no anything. I arrived in Canada with just over $2,000 in Canadian traveler's checks, back when that was a thing, and one bag for my clothes and a backpack full of books. Those were my entire possessions. That's how I started, nothing more.
And so why do you think people insist on rewriting the history, making it that you're an heir? I mean, I get some of the same thing on a minor level, right?
I grew up still alive, so I can't be an heir.
Right.
To err is human, they say.
But
they err on the air.
but there is something that's weird happening out there. you innovate and you make new things, and there is a drive to hem in that innovation. I was recently talking with a pretty major political figure in the United States who's not of the left, and he was suggesting, for example, that we need to outlaw automated driving because it's going to put truckers out of work. Because if we don't outlaw outlaw the new technologies, this kind of Ludditism, then people are going to be out of work. It's going to destroy the society. And what we really have to focus on are the people who are going to be left behind by the technology. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, I think ultimately, if you have digital superintelligence, I'm not sure there's a job for anyone. It's, so the whole AI discussion is a question in and of itself. I do think in a positive AI future that there will be no shortage of goods and services. It won't be universal basic income, it'll be universal high income. Now that all sounds good, but in terms of like the book Man's Search for Meaning, well, if to the degree that you're defined by your career, you may have trouble finding meaning in life. That's more the challenge that if one is to have an existential crisis, it's like, well, how can I do anything useful if the computer can do everything better than me? That'll really be the challenge. Now maybe that'll be fine. Maybe you just play, watch incredible movies, play video games, and do water sports, and the computer just does everything else. I guess that's the benign scenario. Have you read Ian Banks?
No.
I highly recommend Ian Banks' the culture books. It's probably the best semi-utopian future of AI, where the computers are far smarter than humans, but they take care of the humans. Like they care about the humans being happy.
So in that future, I mean, I think one of the things you've talked about is the fact that the West is completely under-reproducing. Not due to you personally.
Yeah.
You've been very productive, and I have 4 kids, so
Objectively.
we're both
Good,
ahead of the
fantastic,
curve.
excellent.
But that would be presumably.
Go for a fifth.
Well, I'll talk to my wife, but that would be one of the places presumably where people will have to put their efforts. And what's interesting is that the people who are putting their efforts in those directions tend to be, by and large, more religiously oriented, right? We're seeing the scientific humanist community has very few kids, and religious people have many kids, right?
The atheists are breeding themselves out. I talked to Richard Dawkins, who wrote The Selfish Gene, Blind Watchmaker and whatnot, and coined the term meme, I believe. And I said, well, so how many kids do you have, Richard? Oh, 1. Okay, so you're going to have 1 kid, great. Yes, the birth rate tends to correlate with the degree to which someone is religious, the degree to which they have the least amount of education, and basically the poorer someone is, the less educated someone is, and the more religious they are, the more kids they will have.
So
those are objective correlates.
So I'm going to make the case to you on a religious level that the only one of those things that is possible to have in the West and not get rid of all the glories of the West is a belief in a higher power or in a religious belief of some sort, because you can be rich, and I mean, like I'm doing pretty well.
You can't be like a nihilist or something.
Right, exactly. Like nihilism doesn't tend toward anything. And I know that you've thought a lot about that sort of stuff. And how do you get out of that sort of the nihilist box and find what to do?
Well, my religion, for lack of a better word, is one of curiosity, where we want to expand the scope and scale of consciousness on Earth and beyond Earth, and ultimately to other star systems. And in order to do that, we need to increase the number of conscious beings, and we need to advance technology such that we can have a self-sustaining city on Mars, ultimately populate the whole solar system, and then go beyond our solar system to other star systems. And therefore, we need more humans. Pretty simple.
So, I mean, that's an amazingly different goal than what we've had for the past.
Well, I propose this as a new philosophy.
Yeah.
Well, not new, but maybe niche. But hopefully getting a bit bigger. With that philosophy in mind, the purpose of that philosophy is that the more we expand the scope and scale of consciousness, the more we are able to understand the reality that we live in, the nature of the universe. to answer the questions that we have, and perhaps more importantly, to know what questions we are not asking. As Douglas Adams would say in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that the answer is the easy part, the question is the hard part. Answer's 42, what's the question? So I think that's a pretty optimistic, positive philosophy. Also has a lot of room for other beliefs if you want to add them to, But the fundamental tenets of my belief structure are expand the scale of consciousness. More people. I guess more computers too, to the degree that they are conscious. And we want to pass through one of the great filters that, you familiar with the Fermi paradox and the great filter?
No. Okay,
so Enrico Fermi, great, amazing physicist, posed a very simple question. He said, where are the aliens? Because we've seen no sign of them. Now, a lot of people think they've seen signs of aliens. I have seen no evidence whatsoever of aliens. So it's a troubling question. Why not? So one of the answers, perhaps the most likely answer, is that we're it. That the tiny candle of consciousness that constitutes humanity is all that there is in this vast darkness. And I think we should assume that that is the case until we actually have firm evidence to the contrary. And moreover, human consciousness only arose after 4.5 billion years. So it took a long time. And if it had taken even 10% longer, it probably would not have evolved, because the sun is expanding. As the sun expands, it'll start heating Earth, and the oceans will evaporate, will become more like Venus, inhospitable to life. So I think we may have achieved consciousness, or consciousness that's capable of developing technology just in time. I find it remarkable that we are at this point in history where we are able, for the first time, to go beyond Earth, to send people. We sent people to the moon in the early 70s, but have since not gone back. But with the Starship rocket that SpaceX is developing, we've had 2 test flights, we'll have many more this year. That vehicle is designed to make life multiplanetary. It's the first vehicle that is capable of doing that. A permanent base on the moon and a city on Mars. So I think we want to get that done as soon as possible. The window of opportunity to make life multiplanetary and secure the future of consciousness may be open for a long time, or it may be open for a short time. I think it would be wise to not assume that it'll be open for a long time.
So,
act now to make life multiplanetary.
One of the things that's fascinating about what you're saying is that it assumes an innate level of belief and love for human beings.
Yes.
And so
I love humanity.
So why? I mean, it's a weird question, but I mean, really, kind of why? I mean, we're not that great. I mean, we have amazing capabilities. No, but we can be angels, we can be devils. Obviously, we have the capacity for all of the things in between. What do you think makes, aside from just the qualities that theoretically could be duplicated by AI in the very near future, what makes human beings unique and worthwhile?
I'll tell you something. So that I think that maybe resonates is like, I think actually everyone loves humanity. Now they may not love everyone in humanity, but you say how many people want to be in solitary confinement? Okay, how many people want to live alone in a forest by themselves? Almost no human beings want to do that. So actually, in reality, all humans love humanity and want to be part of humanity. Almost, with the rare exception of someone who's got severe psychological issues. So that's why solitary confinement is considered a terrible punishment in prison. Because even though other prisoners are probably they're not the finest examples of humans, you still want to hang out with them. So I think it's a natural thing. As long as kids aren't taught to hate other people, I think the natural inclination is to love humanity.
So I want to go back to some of the business conversation, then I want to go back to the SpaceX of it. When it comes to business, what do you see as sort of the biggest obstacles to not only the success of your companies, but to success generally? Because there seems to be this idea abroad that people can't duplicate the path. That basically, it used to be that people like you could succeed, but now it's totally finished, and now you can't get ahead.
In America, nothing's changed in that regard as far as I'm aware. There are, new companies being formed all the time in the U.S.
Well, what do you see as the obstacles to companies being successful increasingly in the West, if there are obstacles to that?
Well, I think excess regulation. Taxes do ratchet up every year, making it a little difficult, a little harder every year as taxes ratchet up. But the regulatory creep is, I think, a massive danger. So laws and regulations are immortal, but the regulators and the lawmakers make new rules and regulations and laws and regulations every year. And so you have this, so every year you've got this sort of another layer of laws and regulations. It starts getting to the point where everything's illegal. You can't get anything done. Now you say, well, how did they deal with it in the past? Well, the way they dealt with it in the past would there'd be a war. And the war would wash away the old laws and regulations. We literally would take a war to change things. Like Napoleon, establishing the Napoleonic Code from that overrode the old law systems of the sort of lords and peasants, and it was, for all that the bad that Napoleon did, I think he did more good actually. So the evidence is in that I think maybe a third or a half of all countries on Earth still run on the Napoleonic Code. So now we prefer to have some cleanup process for laws and regulations that doesn't require war. That'd be nice. I think that's something we need to institute, like basically garbage collection for laws and regulations.
And one of the things that has been suggested, there's a book called The Sovereign Individual, written in the late 90s, that basically suggested that we are entering the era of avoidance, that people are going to be able to be sovereigns. You talked about sovereign wealth earlier. You're not, king of something, but you are the head of your companies. And so in the future, people will just be able to move money around, locate to where the regulations are the friendliest. And so the United States right now thinks that we have the advantage because we historically have, but that doesn't mean that that's how it's going to go in the future. You're seeing more and more companies, for example, going to Singapore or going elsewhere just to move away from those regulations. So avoidance, which wasn't a strategy in 17th century France, where are you going to go exactly, is now a very real set of possibilities for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, well, and regulation in the U.S. varies by state as well. California is the most regulated state, so increasingly people seek to do things outside of California or outside of New York. Those are the two most heavily regulated states.
So, given all those things, do you think that there's going to be a backlash to regulation in America, or do you think that the West is sort of, America being a stand-in for that, sliding into this morass of regulation based on, honestly, it looks like, to a certain extent, jealousy. It looks like trying to tear down success in the name of fairness, as opposed to...
there's two different things. There's regulations which are intended to serve the public good. Rules against one thing or another. Like the car industry has lots of rules in how to make a car. There'll be like piles of books in this room to cover just the U.S. regulations for what is required to build a car. Those are at least ostensibly aimed. They're aimed for safety, but in terms of other regulations, yeah, I think generally we want to be averse to any regulation that is anti-meritocratic. The point of fighting racism, sexism, and whatnot was not to replace it with another form of racism and sexism, but it was rather to get rid of racism and get rid of sexism. Not change it to another form. And DEI is fundamentally racist and sexist.